What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the Alto again, and this time we are here with Bob of the Almighty Silent Theory. It is great to have you here. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you here. Tell us how it ends. Fantastic album slated to come out this September. Please tell me how Tell Us How It Ends sort of came to fruition, because already from what I heard from Burn It All Down to Emptiness in You and whatnot, it's a very, very well-made album, very well put together. What was the sort of like vision behind the making of this album, if there was one at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, our last couple albums that we've done with Dakota as our lead singer, so Delusions and now I'm blanking on their album. But either way, we've really done those all ourselves. We've been in the same recording studio, the same engineers and stuff like that. We've been in full creative control, and we've been writing songs much longer than those two albums, and we just really wanted to make sure that we were still evolving and still growing. And so I think one of the big things on this album for us was we partnered with a few different people to do some co-writes and stuff like that to just kind of see how other people are doing it, see what we could be learning, and like what are some of the new tricks that maybe we've missed out on and stuff like that. So we partnered with Four Horsemen studio out of Nashville to do some songwriting. We partnered with a guy named Tom who does a lot of songwriting for like Motionless in White, things like that. And we switched up our studio. So we had done a couple random songs with Chris Dawson, who was an original guitar member of Seasons After. And now he's gotten into recording, and I mean, he's working with some of the biggest bands, a lot of people who are, out there moving and shaking, and he's producing a really big sound, and it's very like aggressive, and that's kind of what we were looking for with this, because Delusions, I think, was a very kind of stripped down album. We had a little bit of piano, a little bit of strings, but for the most part, it was just kind of a straight up rock album. Our last album, we really leaned into kind of writing songs that we liked that were really based off of songs or some genres and stuff that we were influenced by. So there were some heavy songs on there. There's a couple like ballady type songs. There was one song that was almost a country song, and so it was just very much an album of songs that we really enjoyed. And this one, we due to a lot of outside influence and things like that, like we were definitely feeling a little bit more aggressive on this one, and this will like hands down be our heaviest album. I think it'll still have all those like earmarked things that make it a Silent Theory album, but it's definitely our heaviest one to date. And some of the songs on there are, I think, will shock a few people. But yeah, and I think that even comes through in Dakota's lyric writing and things like that. Like the lyrics are a little bit more like in your face kind of, and so yeah, I think it'll be fun to see people's reaction to it.
It's fair to say that this does signify like a new beginning for Silent Theory in a way, right? It doesn't just feel like a follow-up or sort of like a continuation or picking up where you left off, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're always trying to grow and evolve, but I definitely feel like this is kind of stepping in a direction that we've always kind of wanted to go, but hadn't really pulled the trigger. And I think that, writing some of these heavier songs is one fun, but also like they really do connect with a lot of people. And honestly, they're a lot of fun to play live. So
is this where the meaning of this, because I usually refrain to asking what does the record name mean, because it's such like a cliche sort of filler question, but really, is that where the name of Tell Us How It Ends sort of came to be?
It's a little bit of a twofold. So the song that we worked on a co-write with Tom, the song title is Tell Us How It Ends, and we really kind of liked that, just that tone of that title. It's just kind of, it's just, there's a lot of things to be frustrated about, always, but it feels like recently a lot of people have been like more frustrated about a lot of other things and stuff. And I mean, I think to some extent it's getting to a point where it's like, all right, like let's just cut out the middleman. Like, where are we going? Like, what are we doing? Let's just quit jibber jabbing and get where we're going. Like, what is the path forward here? So I think it was definitely kind of the feeling behind choosing that as the album title.
And going back to what you mentioned too, being a heavier direction in a way, like, do you feel like with the singles that we've had heard so far, such as "Burn It All Down" and "Emptiness in You," and "Afterthought," are these like good representations of what that whole album is going to sound like, or is that just one little taste of what's to come? Is there a lot more tricks and twists in the fold?
Um, I think that's a really good representation. There's definitely at least one song that's kind of an outlier that Dakota's super excited about, and kind of split the band a little bit. But I think a lot of people will really resonate with it. But I think for the most part, like most of the songs will be kind of like not too far outside of that pocket. Here in a little bit, I don't know the exact date, but I know we're going to be releasing another single off the album called "Made Me This Way," and that one is definitely a little bit of a heavier song, like right out the gate, but still has like a really nice melodic chorus and stuff like that. So like the songs aren't going to be just like complete, shred all the way through. Kind of like they'll still have a little bit of something you can sing along to in the car.
Do you feel like with the heavier direction that you took too, that you had to like bring out like new tools from the toolbox to approach from your guitar playing as well? Were you changing your riffing style or maybe your technique at all, or bringing out different effects, or has that all kind of remained the same from your previous work?
Definitely stretching a little bit, in a good way though, because I mean, I'm not gonna say our songs were like super easy, but like we definitely have like found a couple like styles that were I gotten comfortable with, and so um, these songs definitely have a little bit more movement on the fretboard, even in the rhythm parts. So been having to kind of brush up on some of those things that maybe I hadn't done in a while. But yeah, I think it's good though.
Yeah, and being both the guitarist and the backing vocalist too, do you almost have to? Do you feel, because I always thought that like a lot of guitar players who do backup vocals, I'm not talking James Hetfield or Matt Heafy, I'm talking like just the backup vocals. Are you harmonizing more or less? Like, is there? I'm trying to think of the best way to ask this, but do you feel that being the backup vocalist, it's almost just an extension of your guitar? It doesn't really feel like a completely separate instrument altogether.
It does now. When I first started doing it, I had a really hard time wrapping my head around singing and playing, but it has definitely become a lot more second nature.
I mean, is it like splitting your mind in two?
It was at the beginning. Like I don't know. Like yeah, it definitely was a lot more difficult. Not as bad as when I tried to teach myself how to play piano. That one I still haven't wrapped my head around. Playing the bass parts with your left hand and everything else with your right hand, and doing them both and reading both at the same time. Like I got a lot of respect for people who can do that.
I could just do the first part, playing the bass with the left hand and playing the melodic parts with the right, as well as using the foot to do the sustain pedal. But people who are
Yeah.
doing all that while looking at sheet music and singing all along at the same time, yeah, there's a YouTuber I followed. I don't know if he's still making content. I followed him a long time ago, but his name was Adam Monroe, and he did like a bunch of Perfect Circle and Tool stuff, as well as his own good original material too. He put out a couple albums, and like he was literally playing a grand piano, singing word for word the lyrics. It's like it's absurd that another human can
Yeah.
do that. Like it's like to me, like not even AI is capable of doing that.
Yeah, it's a lot. And it's one of those where like I grew up in the orchestra, so like I can read both bass and treble clef, but like I just don't know how people like keep track and do both at the same time.
Is theory something that you sort of factor into your songwriting in a way, or being that this is rock and roll, you're kind of just like saying fuck the rules the whole time?
A little bit. I mean, it definitely has to make sense. I mean, even people who don't know music theory will know if it doesn't sound right. But it's definitely not something that we're prying over. We're not sitting down with like circle of fifths and be like, okay, here we go. So this one in here, da, da, da. But I mean, yeah, it does play a little bit of a factor though.
Yeah. How do you know when you are finished with a song?
That's the hard part because like in some ways I feel like we're never really finished, and that's I mean when we wrote Delusions, we've been playing some of those songs on stage for like 4 or 5 years before we recorded them, and so like we'd gone through different permutations before we finally recorded them. But and there's definitely times where like we'll be playing a song off a new album and just be like, oh, what would have been really cool here is if we had done this. But I definitely think that there's kind of that moment where you're kind of working through things and kind of adjusting things, and if it takes you longer than like a few minutes to like, I think we should do this, that's usually a good place to stop because I mean, you could forever change things and then, sometimes make it much worse or just not really be improving it, just making it different.
How do you sort of like capture that energy too? Because I've always said that a good song, to be one of the many qualities that a good song has, is when they capture a moment. But if you're working on the riffs one day and you're not adding lyrics into like the next day, and then you're not mixing it till the next week, and then like all that, how do you maintain the moment the longer you work on something?
That is a great question because, at least recently, the last, however many songs we've written, like, we'll write the music and then usually we'll send it to Dakota, who always has like 1,000 different, like, sets of lyrics or partial things in his phone. And, like, he can usually find something he's been working on and, like, apply a vocal melody to it. But, there really hasn't been too many times, thankfully, where we like send him something. He's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
could we do this here or like bring it up here or something like that? But uh, conversely, there has been a few times where he's like, "Well, this is something I've been working on," and he'll already have a vocal melody, and we're like, "Okay, okay, I think I can, meet me in the middle, but I think we can do something with this." And so I think the excitement of just like once you start piecing it back together, I think like it kind of like reinvigorates itself.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that too because whenever I ask a band like how the making of an album was, and they give me the answer like we all collectively came together or it was such a mutual like process, I don't buy that for a second. You're in a band with 4 to 5 other people with all of your different experiences, all your different tastes and inspirations. There's gonna be some disagreements and some different ideas incorporated in there. But do you think that maybe helps in a way? Do you think like I feel like that if everybody was on the same page the entire time, it would almost make the music like significantly more meaningless, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely hard because you want everybody to have some sort of buy-in with the songs. You don't want to feel like you're playing, a cover song kind of like because you had no input on it. But and we've definitely done it both ways. We're like, sometimes people will show up to practice and like, hey, I got this riff stuck in my head, and we'll play around with it and it evolves into something. Um, but I definitely think that even when, because Scott does a lot of the songwriting for us, or at least the musical composition, bear like the outline and structure. I think a lot of times, we'll get at least a rough draft of it, and then when we play through it in practice, like we'll kind of have some notes to tweak it. But like, um, it's also hard because as far as lyrics go, like Dakota usually just kills it. Like every now and then we'll just be like, that felt forced or something like that, and then he'll come up with something else. But um, so it's still like collaborative process, but I wouldn't say that we're all just like sitting down with a notepad and like, okay, like what's our next word gonna be?
Yeah.
Uh, it's definitely a little bit more functional, I think, the way that we've been trying to do it.
Yeah. I've always wondered how a band like Slipknot, where they have like 9 members, all equally freaking insane, somehow is still managing to write like amazing music to this day.
Yeah, it is kind of impressive.
Yeah, I am curious though. What are some of your influences for your guitar playing in a way? Because the rhythmic aspects behind it and the more melodic aspects behind it, I see many different. Like I could tie it back to many different genres and many different eras of music as well.
Absolutely. And that is something that's very, kind of big in our band is that our influences really do span so many different genres and decades and stuff. Because, I grew up like my dad listened to like a weird mix of like Led Zeppelin and AC/DC, like to like Phil Collins and that kind of stuff. My mom was way more into like 50s and 60s. Um, and then my sisters were kind of split on 90s country and 90s like hip hop and gangster rap. So like it was a pretty diverse household, and I just kind of got to like absorb all of that. But I mean, I also, as I got into like high school and started playing in bands and stuff like that, I was listening to a lot of like the pop punk stuff where it wasn't like necessarily difficult music or anything like that, but like there was a certain element of just like performance and just kind of like, fuck it, man, let's have some fun. And so I think we try and incorporate a lot of that kind of stuff. And Scott, listen to a lot of the like he went through a phase where he only listened to Kiss and like is really into a lot of the like the heavier like late 80s early 90s like kind of metal bands and things like that. I think we all were really into like some of the early wave of like the new metal and stuff like that. So like Korn, Linkin Park, Saliva, a lot of those bands that were kind of that crossover of like really heavy music with a little bit of hip hop, but still melodic. And um, I think all of that really kind of plays a part in the kind of songwriting where we try to make it interesting, but also still something you can vibe to and something that's honestly, we try not to like get out over our skis because we are not good enough at playing our instruments to be like a prog rock band or something like that. Having seen like we played a show with Gojira and it's like, good lord, like I don't think I'll ever be able to play guitar like that. Like it's
Well,
just it's crazy.
never say never. I think you guys are the like, and I mean it as a compliment. I don't. I think Gojira does their thing, and I think you do your thing. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
I think once you sort of have your thing going, it doesn't really matter who you compare yourself to, one way or
Yeah.
another. So
Yeah, no, we definitely like to have songs that are heavy and engaging and still interesting, but also something that we can still be kind of active on stage.
fair enough. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for such an awesome conversation. And most of all, thank you for another fantastic Silent Theory album. Just with the release of Tell Us How It Ends coming out in September, what could we be expecting from Silent Theory in the near future, if you're allowed to say at this time, of course.
Yeah, so we for sure have a little West Coast run with the Skylit Drive coming up. So that'll be fun. They're doing like a little anniversary tour. They got some new music out, so it'll be fun to be a part of that. We're playing Rockfest here at the end of July out in Caddo, Wisconsin, and then I know we're working on some other like shows and tours and stuff like that to try and help support the album. So like late summer, early fall. I would expect some other dates coming up soon because we had a couple things that were almost ready to announce, and then like they kind of fell through. So we're working on getting something put together, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think if people want to stay in touch, they can go to silenttheory.com. We have links to all of our socials, like all of the different streaming platforms where you can listen to our music, and then there's also tour schedule, merch store, the links to the videos. Like it's a good hub to find out all things Silent Theory.
Hell yeah. Can't wait to see it all. But thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Silent Theory. Tell Us How It Ends. Be sure to pick that up coming out this September. We'll see you next time on Heavy New York.
Awesome. Thanks so much.